Good morning, everyone. Welcome back for another episode of Cozy Horror with me, Dr. Plague. Let's get you started with another great bunch of stories with a theme read by me so that we can hang out a little bit and get through the day. Today's topic is going to be older brothers. I've got a little bit of practice with this one, being an older brother myself. It's funny what exactly siblings remember that you may yourself have put out of your mind. Let's begin with a story about an older brother who tells a story that may be a little realer than even he believed. Let's tell a classic story about the Corn Man.
I remember it like it was yesterday. My mom was at work, and my brother Daryl was watching me. Daryl was older than me, about 6 years, and he was kind of a jerk. Our dad had left right after I was born, and Mom had to work 2 jobs to keep us fed and clothed and keep the lights on and the roof over our heads. Maybe Daryl blamed me for Dad leaving, and that's why he was usually so mean to me. He was never violent, though I got the feeling he wanted to be sometimes, but he always teased me. He told me there were monsters in the basement who would eat me, and told me there were ghosts in the attic, that the boogeyman would come and carry me off some night, about all the perverts who would just scoop me up off the street someday and do stuff I didn't really understand at the time. He liked to scare me, and I think that's how we got on the subject of the Corn Man. It happened one afternoon when we were playing hide and seek. Daryl rarely played with me, not unless Mom made him. And he was being slow about counting, just trying to wait for Mom to go to work so we could go back inside and keep watching TV like he wanted to. He was counting, and I was hiding out in the cornfield where I knew he wouldn't find me. As he finished, he stepped out into the field, knowing that's where I was. He started looking, cursing, and stomping around as he couldn't find me, and seemed to be getting pretty frustrated. Finally, he said the words I will never forget. "Better come out, turd, before the Corn Man gets ya." I stood up. He had been pretty close to finding me, and asking who the Corn Man was. Daryl smiled wickedly, seeing another opportunity to scare me, and get himself back inside as well. The Corn Man, he told me, lived in the cornfields that seemed to perpetually surround our house. The field was filled with corn during this time of year, and Daryl said that the Corn Man patrolled it and got little kids who went out to play in the field. He said that the Corn Man couldn't see you if you stayed still. If you just stood like a statue, not moving an inch, he wouldn't see you, and he'd think you were just another stalk of corn. I told him not to lie, but he said it was true, and said we should get back inside before the Corn Man caught us in the field. We were both in the living room, Daryl gripping the remote and flipping through the channels, as Mom said goodbye and left for the night. He had spent that week tormenting me with stories about the Corn Man that were usually just ways for him to get out of stuff. "Corn Man will come into your house if he smells garbage. Better take it out before he smells it." I heard Corn Man comes to take away messy kids. "You better clean up around here." "Oh, you're going to tell Mom, huh? Well, the Corn Man loves to eat little tattletales, so go ahead and tell Mom you saw me smoking. I hope I'm awake when he comes to get you." That night, however, he just grinned as someone knocked on the door. He told me to go get it, and I prickled a little. I didn't want to go out after dark. Not after what he had told me about the Corn Man mainly hunting at night, and usually for kids who were out past curfew. He pushed me with his boot as I dithered, and I stumbled to the door as someone pounded on it again. My hands shook as I reached out, turning the knob slowly as I pulled it open. I sighed happily, though, happy to see Reggie and Clyde for the first time in my life. Reggie and Clyde had been Daryl's friends since elementary school. Mark was usually with them as well, but I supposed he must be off doing something else. They were often involved in Daryl's shenanigans, and I kinda hated seeing them come around. Tonight, though, I was just glad they weren't the Corn Man. I turned to tell Daryl that his friends were here, but he was already heading for the door, pulling on his leather jacket. He told me he was going out, and I asked where he was going after dark. "Not that it's any of your business, but we're going to go summon the Corn Man so he'll give us a wish." I felt my mouth slip open, and asked why he would do that. "Well, in the story, if you can complete his challenge, then he grants you a wish. But," he said, turning back towards the door, "you'd better stay here. You'd probably be too scared to come out into the cornfield after dark. I agreed with him until I realized that meant I'd be home alone all night, but by myself. I had grabbed my coat and ran after the three of them before I could think better of it. The three of them were standing by the cornfield, cigarettes winking on and off as I approached. Clyde elbowed Daryl and pointed at me. Daryl grinned the widest I'd ever seen him grin, and the effect was pretty terrifying. He looked like a ghoul from a zombie movie in the cigarette light. Maybe even one of those pedophiles he was always telling me would get me. Well, 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 look who decided to join us. You trying to get a wish too, turd? No, I said, snuffling a little in a mixture of fear and mucus. I just didn't want to be at home alone. What are you talking about? You never said you got wishes from the corn man. Daryl took a long drag off his smoke, the light making his face look like a jack-o'-lantern. Well, the word is that if you stand in the field and say the magic words, the corn man will come and test you. If you can stand as still as a cornstalk, not moving and not being caught, he'll grant you one wish. But if he catches you, your blood will water his cornfield. So, sound like something you want to do, turd? I shook my head nervously, the wind rustling the corn and making me shudder. I didn't want to go out there, but I didn't want to stay here in the dark alone either. He snorted at me and rolled his eyes, pitching his cigarette away from the dry cornfield. Well then, go home if you're going to be a baby. The rest of us will get our wishes, and you'll just be home, pissing your pants. I shook my head again, and he must have taken it for acquiescence. Then come on, or don't. I don't really care. They set off into the thick cornfield, and I followed after them. The sea of stalks whipped past me as the three bigger boys walked in front of me. It was dark, the night birds and the sound of animals tuning up all around us. I was shivering, and it had nothing to do with the night or the chill in the air. I was scared, terrified even, and the jostling boys laughed and whispered to each other as they walked towards the center of the vast cornfield. When the corn surrounded us, we stopped, and Daryl turned to look at us. Okay, so now we chant the special chant to summon him. They stood in a triangle, looking at me, and I moved up to make it a diamond. Corn man, come to me if you can. Corn man, I can stand as the cornstalks can. Corn man, still as stone, not like a man. Corn man, still and quiet as the cornstalks can. He looked at us as he finished and told us to chant with him. As we raised our voices to the sky, I began to slur my words as my teeth chattered. I was terrified, standing in the cornfield that had been the setting of so many nightmares, and listening as we summoned the creature that had stalked me through those hated fields. Why had I come with them? Would I really have been less safe at home? Wouldn't I have been fine as long as I stayed inside? I heard my brother's words as he told me about how the corn man came after kids who were alone. They drifted through my mind as I felt myself start to cry. I chanted the words to summon the corn man along with the rest of them, tears streaming down my face as the fear took hold. When we heard the rustling, Daryl told us to be quiet. All right, stand still so he can't see you. If you move, he'll catch you, and then you'll be dead. All four of us stood as still as we could, the corn rustling as something came towards our location. I hoped that maybe it was the farmer that owned the land. He was a nice guy, but he didn't like people playing in his cornfield after dark. If not him, then I hoped it was some of the teenagers he usually kicked out of the field. Let it be anyone but the shadowy monster that was the corn man. He was like a scarecrow with cornstalks for hands and a mouthful of black teeth in my dreams. He would grow very high on his cornstalk legs, and he was faster than anything ever, even Jason or Michael Myers. As we stood in the field like idiots, I saw the sack head of a scarecrow come through the stalks and had to stifle a scream. He was wearing overalls and a straw hat, his face a sack with grease paint, and he was lumbering up out of the corn shakily. He had normal hands, but one of them was holding a scythe and the other was holding a hatchet. As he came stomping out of the corn, I held as still as possible, not moving a single muscle. He was real, he was actually real. In my mind, I had believed in him. Of course I had, but I had hoped that he wasn't really real. It's hard to explain, but some rational part of my mind knew that it was all just a goof my brother had come up with to scare me. Now I was forced to cower as we watched this terror hunt through the field for us. He moved like a wraith, silent and sure, except for the crunch of old corn husks. He smacked at the stalks with his scythe sometimes, and I had to stop my teeth from chattering as he turned to finally look at my hiding place. Until then, he had lumbered around like one of those adults that's only pretending to look for you. I felt like he knew where we were. He was choosing not to find us, and now the game was up. I moved my eyes around, not daring to turn my head, but I couldn't see my brother or his friends anywhere. Had they made a break for it? This was their idea, after all. Why would they run? Had the corn man gotten them? No, I would have heard that. They had abandoned me. Daryl had finally gotten tired of having me around and decided to have the corn man do his dirty work for him. Mom and the police would search for me, but they'd never find my body. I would water the corn forever. As my eyes rolled around looking for them, the sack head turned towards me, and the creature started stalking in my direction. I was speechless, utterly terrified, and as I stood like a statue, I felt a warm stream of urine run down my leg as the cloth hood came within inches of my face. I could hear his raspy breath beneath it, smell the air as he stared down, and I found myself wishing he would just get it over with already. We stared at each other for a count of 20 before the corn man blew out a raspberry of barely contained laughter and let his weapons drop to the ground. "Are you kidding me? Daryl, your brother pissed his pants!" All three of them came out of the tall cornfield then, laughing like donkeys. The mask came off to reveal Mark's stupid, sweaty face as he guffawed at me. They surrounded me like a pack of jackals, and all pointed to the piss stain on my pants and the liquid running down into the dirt. I felt the tears falling again, but my body was still locked in a rictus of terror. Daryl had tricked me. He'd tricked me again. He had terrified me and humiliated me, and now I would have to walk back home with cold, wet pants as my brother and his friends laughed at me. I wanted to run away, but my legs weren't quite ready to spirit me away just yet. That's probably the only reason I'm still alive. I saw Mark jerk suddenly, the smile dribbling off his face as something squelched from his stomach. It spattered across my brother and his friends, though they noticed it too late. I, however, couldn't help but miss it as it pattered across my face and chest. It was blood, thick and red, and they turned as a horror strode from the field of lush cornstalks. My mind hadn't done him justice. The corn man, or whatever he was, looked more like a terrible husk doll that you sometimes see at the farmer's market when Mom took us. It appeared to be woven together from corn husks and corn stalks and the silk tops of the plants. It was dirt and leaves and corn cobs and live plants. Its entire body seemed to move like a living vine. It moved with a complete form, its entire being, and it waded into Daryl and his friends like a force of nature. Clyde had turned to look at what had wetted him, and I saw that twisted gnarl of root and cornstalks slam into the side of his head. His neck audibly broke, bones poking out from his collar as he fell sideways into the corn. Daryl screamed, Kyle cursed loudly, and I stood rooted in fear as the corn man went about his work. "No way!" Daryl yelled, stepping back as he turned to face the creature. "No friggin' way!" "It's real?" Kyle asked. The creature momentarily stalled as it looked at them speculatively. No, I made it up. I made the whole thing up. It can't be real. It can't be real. It can't be..." He died with that negation on his lips. The corn man extended his thick, rooted arm, and it grew as it coursed towards Daryl's head. Daryl's screams were cut off as the root covered his face, his throat bulging as it poured its roots and stalks down his throat. I could see his body twitching, his limbs convulsing as the corn man pumped his roots into him. My cheeks were wet again, my terror-fueled tears streaming down my face as Kyle made a run for it. He disappeared into the corn, just in time to miss the fate of his friend. Daryl's body erupted in a spray of corn stalks as they burst from him in a red spray of arterial blood. He crumpled, very dead, as his form was shredded. He lay in pieces, his body watering the corn just as he had said. I was resprayed with blood, this time being washed in the deluge, but I was still frozen with fear. My body had hit that point where it was numb, too scared to move, and as the corn man stalked in, I could hear my ragged breathing intensifying. I couldn't move, I couldn't speak. I just knew that this was the time when my own blood would water the cornfields, just like Daryl's. He stood face to face with me, much like Mark had when he was pretending, and as the seconds spread out, I felt like my heart must surely stop, and I would die of fear. Then, to my amazement, the corn man spoke. "You have passed my test. You truly can do as the cornstalks can, and have earned a boon of me. What do you desire of the corn man?" I was speechless, my body unmoving, as I continued to stand like a statue before this hulking horror. His voice sounded like the whispering of wind through the cornstalks, and if I hadn't been frozen in fear, I would have shuddered out of my skin as his words hit me. He loomed over me, his body bathed in the blood of my brother and his friends, and I was left to shudder and shake as he stared at me. He cocked his head, his roots making a strange creaking noise as he studied me in my fear. Come now, there must be something you desire. Why else would you brave your death at the hands of the corn man, if not for a boon?" I looked up at him. Even hunkered down, he was taller than me, and my eyes streamed with tears, my body unable to move. "Very well. Know then that the corn man owes thee a boon, a favor as your people say, and he will be back to collect in time. Think well over your wishes, that my debt may be paid." Then he lumbered off after Kyle, his steps groaning as he moved, and I was left standing amidst the stalks. That's where they found me the next day. That's where they found me, and what was left of Daryl, Mark, and Clyde. I was catatonic for days. I had remained still as a stone in the field all night, not daring to move as the fear held sway over me. Even when they called out to me, I couldn't answer them. My legs ached, my body cried out for rest, but my legs refused to unlock. My mother's arms were warm as they wrapped around me. I was cold, hungry, my throat like a desert, but I couldn't move or speak. They kept me in the hospital for weeks, trying to figure out what had happened to me. The police questioned me ceaselessly, being covered in my brother's blood like I was, but my mother ended every interview by telling them that it was pointless to question me. They assumed that I had watched the 4 boys being murdered, Kyle's remains found further out in the field, and I had been traumatized by the events. I stayed like that for almost 3 weeks, before waking up one day to find my arms and legs were ready to obey me again. The police came back to question me, but I told them that I had blacked the whole thing out, not wanting to ever speak of the horrible things that had happened in that field. I only tell you here, a decade later, to come to terms with what happened to me and try to put it behind me. That, and see if anyone else knows of the corn man and his ways. You see, he's come back over the years to collect on his favor. I still live with my mother, my body locking up sometimes when the fear takes over. Once a year, on the anniversary of my brother's death, he comes to ask if I'm ready to take his boon. Sometimes he appears in my room at night, sometimes outside my window, but he always speaks in that strange voice and asks if I'm ready to accept my favor. Every time I remain still, my body seizing up and my jaw locking, and every time he goes away. I've gotten better at getting myself under control again. Last time I was only frozen for an hour, but I've had to go back to the hospital over the years when the catatonia reemerges. One day, I will be able to ask for something, so I never have to see him again. Until then, I suppose I'll be haunted by the visage of the Corn Man.
It's funny sometimes how the worst monsters are the ones that are homegrown. Moving right along, we have a story that's more about a little brother than a big brother, but the older brother still plays quite a part. Let's hear a lament from a younger sibling about their big brother.
March 3rd. I've always kind of hated my brother. Well, hate's a strong word. I just always hated how easy everything was for him. He's 2 years older than me, but everything just comes so easily to him. In high school, he was in ROTC, taking courses in criminal justice, so he could get a leg up on his law enforcement career. He had a string of friends and girlfriends and made his high school years amazing. He never seemed to study, always retaining what he needed for tests, and finished his high school a half a year early with a nearly perfect GPA. He didn't need to. He could have just joined the police academy right out of high school, but he chose to join the Army for 4 years, saying it was his duty to his country. He served as an MP and later as a base investigator for base-related crimes. When he got out, he was practically ready to start police work already. Now he's a hotshot detective, while the only thing I got out of high school was an unfavorable comparison to my perfect older brother and too many bullies to count. But it looks like his streak's coming to an end now, while this new string of murders keeps piling up. They're calling him the West End Cannibal, and his crimes are truly horrific. He meets women online, pretty common in this day and age, and then he murders them in their own homes. He cuts them open, sometimes stealing their organs, and they found bites and burns on them as well. The missing organs lead them to believe that he's eating them, but they don't really seem to have any proof. My brother talks ceaselessly about this guy during our weekly meetups to have a beer and talk about life. This is something he insists on, since it gives him an opportunity to talk about himself. My work is so boring that no one in their right mind would want to hear about it. Very little happens to me that would make anyone want to hear about my life. Probably why I'm still single. The crux of it is, my brother told me last week as he sat on his stool at O'Malley's, is that I don't think the bites belong to him. We found dental records from 3 different sets of teeth, and one of them came back with dental records on a recently deceased person. So what, he grave robs too? I asked, not really interested, but wanting to hear him flounder. The guy's still buried, though. We exhumed his body. His wife was right pissed, and we found his teeth intact. We're chasing our tails here. This guy hasn't given us a lot to work with, and his body count is nearly in the double digits now. I pretended to be speculative, but really I was laughing into my beer at him. My perfect brother, so confident and sure of himself, was being thwarted by some nobody. I had sat on this stool for years, just waiting for a story like this. I know it sounds petty, but I like to see him unsure of himself. It makes me realize that he's just as human as I am. March 12th. There were another 2 murders this week. He called me this time, not having time for a beer as the department scrambled to figure this out. I just don't get it, he said, and his voice sounded tired. This guy's a genuine ghost. We have him picking up his first victim on Tinder, but his second victim was some random woman from a bar. Jesus, but he really did a number on her. He slashed off one of her breasts. We found it in the corner. All of her organs were just strewn about the bathroom. We had kind of thought that maybe he was selling them or something, but now he's not even taking them with him. He's just dismembering them and leaving them sitting around. I pretended to listen, cleaning up so I could get home as I prepared to leave my job, but my face likely looked like a kid on Christmas morning. He was really worried about this. He was really worried that he couldn't solve this case. I remember a year ago I watched something similar happen, feeling that this would be the moment of his failure and wanting to see it. When he caught the guy, a middle-aged cubicle jockey who was murdering prostitutes instead of buying a Jaguar like everyone else who has a midlife crisis, I had watched him crow about it in the press conference and tried not to puke. If pride came before a fall, then his fall was a long time coming. I don't know what I'm going to do, bro. I've been sleeping like shit. I think Carol is starting to suspect that I'm cheating on her. Are you, I asked, ready to put some more arrows in my quiver. No, of course not. I made a note of his quick dismissal, doubting it and saving it for later. But she sees these long hours and jumps to conclusions. I'm out all night pounding the pavement, going over evidence, so I must be out having some kind of affair or sleeping with someone at my office. I can't understand it. I've always taken care of her and the kids. I don't know where all this is coming from. Are you on the job now? Yeah, we're driving to a scene now. I'm hoping like hell it's just a copycat, someone who's a little sloppier than this guy. We tried to keep this out of the news, but when 10 girls get cut up like this, it's almost impossible to keep quiet. I need to catch this guy. My reputation's on the line here. My boss, I could hear him reach up and rub the bridge of his nose, is really coming down on me. We're here. I gotta go. Be safe out there, little brother. There's a lot of crazies out there. I smirked as he hung up, glad to hear he was worried. Maybe this would end his career, let him see how us normal people lived in the muck of disappointment for a while. Hadn't I lived for most of my life like that? Did my parents throw me a party or buy me a car when I finished college? Had they helped me take my state boards or paid for all kinds of test prep that I didn't need and desperately had wanted? Did they constantly talk about my perfect job and perfect family every time they called to see how I was doing? No, they didn't give a shit about me any more than he did. He just wanted a sounding board for his ideas and someone to nod and tell him, "Sure, big bro, you're so right." Maybe it was his turn to be wrong for a change. March 21st. He must be getting desperate. He actually asked me to come and take a look at a crime scene with him. I was just heading to the bar, ready to be regaled on how he could have possibly let this guy kill 13 women and still have no idea who he was, when he called me. He sounded even more frantic this time. The lack of sleep was starting to catch up with him, I could tell, and he sounded like a cornered animal. I didn't let the glee leak into my voice as I listened to him, but I don't see how he couldn't hear it. "Hey, would you mind giving me a second set of eyes?" Eyes? For what? "We found number 14 today. This guy, I swear, he doesn't seem to sleep. He just finds these women and kills them without hesitation. I don't know what to do. I'm coming up with nothing. We found more weird bites on this one, and I feel like maybe you should come take a look. I don't know, give me some insight." "Well, I'm no detective. I don't see how I could be of any help." "No, but you work at the mortuary. Maybe you can notice something on the body or notice something on the bites. All my guys are coming up with a blank here, bro. Anything you could tell me would be amazing." I contemplated telling him I was busy, but I thought better of it. Maybe I could help him out, give him some insight. Wouldn't that just burn him righteously? He picked me up near my apartment, and we rode to the crime scene in silence. My brother kept his eyes forward, but he looked like a smack addict as he snuck glances at me. His hair was unkempt, his ordinarily smooth face covered in coarse stubble, and he shook a little as he drove. I assumed he was past coffee and he'd moved on to caffeine pills as he neared his third week of dealing with these murders. What must Carol think of her husband now that he had completely fallen apart? When we pulled up to the motel, a dingy little place near the interstate, he put a hand on my arm before I got out and looked at me darkly. "I want to thank you for agreeing to this. It's pretty brutal in there. Nothing I'm sure you're not used to, though. I'm up against it, bro. I don't know what to do." And when he said it, he started crying. "I've never had it this hard. This guy, it's like he's playing with me. He's always one step ahead of me, and my investigators, I don't know what I'm going to do if I can't solve this case. The chief is really coming down on me, and if I can't give him answers, I'm going to lose my place as squad leader. I need some help. Do you think you could help me?" I almost couldn't hold my smile. He wanted my help? This was like Christmas and New Year's and losing my virginity rolled all into one. My perfect brother wanted my help. I could just freeze it and eat it. It was so sweet. I agreed, patting his hand and telling him I would do what I could. We moved into the room, and I could see the body hadn't been moved. The room was a mess, blood everywhere, little cards with numbers on them marking organs and cast-off items. The woman's clothes were laying beside the bed, a long hypodermic needle nestled in the bedclothes beside her body. She was splayed out on the bed itself, and her dead eyes looked up at the ceiling. He let me come in, said he'd explain my footprints if it came to it, and gave me gloves just in case. We stood over the bed on opposite sides, my brother looking ready to pop as I assessed the crime scene with my untrained eye. We got a tip-off about an hour ago. Guy called ahead and had the room key waiting at the desk. He sent the girl in to get the key and used a prepaid card so they couldn't track his activity. The card had his transaction on it, and the activity notice was 2 weeks old. He activated it from a burner cell that is currently pinging from a landfill, so we assume he got rid of it. He brought the girl in, shot her full of muscle relaxer, and then he murdered her. No cameras around to see him, no clerk to ID him. No nothing. Left on foot about 2 hours ago, and left the girl in her car here. You sure it was the same guy? I asked. No, but the MO was the same. Organs removed with surgical skill, medical-grade muscle relaxer used to subdue her. No prints found anywhere, and he left her to be found like this. Didn't you say he usually kills them at their homes, though? Yeah, but she was different. Miss Melinda Carr had a husband who was at home at the time of her murder. She brought her lover here so they wouldn't get caught. Boy, did she bet on the wrong guy. I took a look around, under the bed and beside the mattress, before moving into the bathroom. I looked studiously around the motel sink and the long plastic tub. He'd deposited most of her organs into the sink, writing cheater on the glass in her blood before throwing her heart into the toilet. It was all still as he'd left it. The cops had moved nothing, but it certainly let people know what they were dealing with. After about a half hour of looking, I turned back and shrugged. Sorry, I don't see anything different. Did you, by chance, find out what kind of muscle relaxer the killer was using? No, he must have took it with him. Well, whoever opened her up knows his way around a set of instruments. The cuts aren't sloppy, and the organs were removed with care, but I'm guessing you had figured that out by the 14th body. Yeah, we've been canvassing databases for doctors, surgeons, even veterinarians. So far, nothing. I shrugged again. I don't know. You're the cop, not me. All I can tell you is what I see. It's fine. I'll call you a cab. I really want to stay and have a look at the scene again. Thanks for your help, though. I really appreciate it. He was talking on the phone as I left, calling that cab. As he finished, I heard his phone chirp again, and he answered it. I showed myself out, lingering by the door as a gentle sprinkle of rain began. I could hear him talking to someone through the open door, and it didn't sound work-related. He was telling someone about his hard day, and how the case was killing him, and they must have said something that made him laugh, because his next words seemed a little more upbeat. He told them where he was if they wanted to come visit him at work. I could use a shower like you wouldn't believe. Maybe I'll get a room as far away from this one as possible, and tell my wife I'm working late again. I smirked as the cab rolled up. Seems my hunch about his extramarital affair was correct. Seems my brother wasn't as perfect as everyone thought. April 4th. My brother just called me, but I doubt he'll be here on time. They found another victim, number 20 actually, and my brother was more than a little upset about it. He called me from the scene, and I could hear other cops in the background as he stepped out of the apartment. Where are you? He asked, his voice husky. My apartment. Is something wrong? He just breathed heavily for a moment as I heard the elevator open and close in the background. Dee Dee is dead, he said with a little sob as he put his back against the wall in that way he does when news hits him hard. I'm sorry to hear that, but I don't think I know who that is. She was... Look, I'm having a hard time, okay? Carol was icing me out at home. This case is really getting to me, and Dee Dee was just... She was there for me, okay? I nodded, setting the box I was carrying onto my coffee table as I went back for another one. So you were having an affair? It wasn't a question. Yeah, he said, sounding like I had wrung the omission out of him. And now this killer you can't catch has caught her. Am I mistaken? Yeah, you have no idea how much effort it took to pretend like I didn't know her. I had to stand in that apartment, smelling her perfume, smelling her hot blood, and just... But I think I might have finally caught a lead. Oh? I set the box down next to the other one, feigning surprise. I need you to stay where you are, okay? I want to talk to you about what I may or may not know. I need to talk to you before anyone else talks to you. Can you do that?" I smiled at the phone. "I'll be right here when you get here. Don't worry. I'm always here for you, big brother." He hung up then, and I tossed the phone into a corner somewhere as I arranged the boxes. I wouldn't need it anymore. The noose hung over the table like a surprised voyeur. Beneath it sat boxes of evidence, trinkets I'd taken from my victims, the scalpel I'd used to dissect them, and, of course, the vial of muscle relaxer I'd taken from the scene of the very crime he had asked me to come and have a look at. I know you'll read this, big brother, so I have to thank you for the tag-along on that one. I'd been absolutely certain that you were calling me to let me know you wanted me to come to the station that day. I had just noticed that the vial was missing. A vial with my name on it and everything. I couldn't believe I had been that sloppy. Your forensics team was sure to have found it, and my little plan would be up in smoke. When you asked me to come along, I honestly thought it was a setup. When you asked me to have a look at the scene and tell you what I thought, I was sure it was a setup. When the vial was still there beside the mattress, hidden in a little notch beside the frame, I could have thanked God if I believed in anything so archaic. It was easy to put it in my pocket and continue looking around, your addled brain too fixated on your own crime scene to see me as more than a mouthpiece for what you already knew. You see, the answer should have been clear from the start. You checked the surgeons, the doctors, the veterinarians. That was a slap in the face, I can tell you. But you never thought to check the people who take fucking organs out of dead bodies every day, you moron. It was easy to stay one step ahead of you. I've been sitting on that bar stool and listening to you detail how you catch criminals for years. I had all my ducks in a row from the first murder. I was one step ahead of you before you even knew I existed. And now I will be your greatest failure. You will never catch me, big brother, because when you find this journal, I'll already be dead. This will leave you with a tricky little dilemma. You could inform your colleagues that I was the murderer this whole time. You could admit that you sat right across from me and fed me case-specific information while being unable to identify a murderer in your own family. You could tell them this, but you know that your reputation will suffer for it, and that it will be very difficult for them to trust you after this little revelation. Or you could cover it up, dispose of all the evidence that I've gathered, and pretend that the murderer just stopped killing. You could technically get the win. No more murderers means no more shame of being unable to solve them. But you would know, wouldn't you? You would know that I had beaten you, that I had won, and you would have to live with that understanding for the rest of your life. Choice is yours, big brother. I'm about to make mine right now.
It's always funny when the real monster is the pain and the jealousy and the guilt that can be built between two people who've known each other, sometimes for a lifetime. Moving right along, we have a story about the guilt held by an older sibling for his inability to save his younger siblings from a family curse. But perhaps the curse is really what brings them closer together. Let's hear a story about Olegnarts.
It was something of an open secret in my family. A secret that could get you killed if you weren't prepared. In my family, there are always very specific rules about certain things. We cut our meat very small. We don't drink too fast. We don't go into water deeper than our waist. And we don't put our face in the water when we do. It's something you come to understand pretty quickly, or you don't live very long. I remember losing breath for the first time when I was 6, and it scared the hell out of me. It was a simple thing, but those are usually the things that trip us up. I had been out playing in the yard, the July heat beating down on me, and I was sweating profusely as I came pelting up to the hose pipe to the house. I should have gone inside to get a drink. Mom had told me that 1,000 times. but I was so thirsty. The water was cold and nice at first, running down my face as I took long drinks. I was guzzling before I knew it, drinking like a dog as my tongue stuck out. And that was when it happened. Suddenly I was coughing, gagging, but the more I coughed, the harder it became to breathe. It wasn't like I couldn't catch my breath. I felt like someone had their hands around my throat, and they were choking the life out of me. I was scared. A child of 6 isn't supposed to be scared like that. And as the little black spots started appearing in front of my eyes, I started to see something. It was like looking at a photo-negative person, an outline made real. It had long, spindly fingers, 3 times as long as a normal person's, and it had them wrapped around my neck as it throttled me. All I could do was look up at it, watching as it shook me slowly and firmly by the throat. I was blacking out, slowly dying in the clutches of this monster. But that's when I heard someone screaming from behind me, "Alegnarts, Alegnarts, Alegnarts." Just as quickly as it appeared, the creature was gone again. It had broken apart like smoke on a breeze, and my mother was holding me as I lay in her arms. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry. I told you to be careful. You always have to be careful. The Alegnarts is always waiting to get you." Back then, I didn't even think to ask her what the creature was. I was a child. Children believe in monsters. We don't question whether there are monsters or not. We question when they will come for us, or if we will be prepared. My mother had saved me, but she had also taught me how to save myself. I was lucky that day. Some members of our family are not so lucky when the Alegnarts comes for them. Despite the curse that followed us, I had a few siblings, 2 brothers and 2 sisters, neither of whom made it to adulthood. I had 2 older siblings, Sam and Gabrielle, and 2 younger siblings, Nikki and Matthew, a boy and a girl of each. I was what you would call a middle child, but I wouldn't be for long. Their deaths were too much for my father. He died before I finished high school, but my mother lived on. It was like she couldn't allow herself to die, knowing that she had to protect her children. Then, just her child, me. My sister was the first to go. She was older than me, 2 years older, and we often played together. I don't think she believed in this creature, but she had always been lucky. She didn't have a chance to see it, like I did. But when I was 8 and she was 10, she died very suddenly. I'm not sure if she believed then, but I believe that she saw the Alegnarts before she went. Mom was busy that day. My baby brother was less than a year old, and he needed a lot of care. My sister and I were home. My older brother was out with friends, and my younger sister was at our aunt's house with her daughter for a play date. And we were sitting around the house being bored. We were watching cartoons, lying on the couch, when we heard a sound that all children hope for. It was the gentle music of an ice cream truck. We both got excited, running to our rooms to see if we had any money, and we were out the door before our mother could even think to stop us. She was in the back, trying to get Matthew to sleep, and when the truck pulled up to the curb, we made our orders. Gabby got a bomb pop, and I got a Choco Crunch. I was eating slowly, taking my time as Mother had taught us to, but Gabby was excited. She had wanted a bomb pop all summer, but the ice cream truck didn't come down here very often. She was practically dancing on the sidewalk, dropping the wrapper beside the curb as the truck drove slowly up the road and away from us. She took a big bite, getting almost the entire tip of the bomb pop in one giant chomp, and I saw as her throat worked in an attempt to get it all down. She wheezed, her air cutting off as the ice cream bulged her throat. I got scared, watching her hands scrabble at her throat as she tried to breathe, and as her eyes got wide, I saw something in them that made me remember that day 2 years before. She was seeing it, the Alegnarts, and it was proving itself much more lively than she had believed it could. I couldn't see it, but I watched as something took hold of her throat. It pressed the sides of her neck, breaking the ice cream and sending it sliding down even as her windpipe was closed off by those treacherous fingers. A paramedic would later claim that the ice cream must have melted enough to slide down the rest of the way, but I knew what I had seen. I'd seen those fingers as they made indentions on her throat. I had seen her look of terror as it killed her. I stood there, fear gripping me like those fingers, and tried to make my lips speak its name. That's where my mom found us, me still trying to speak, and Gabrielle already dead in the street. I never forgot that day, the day I watched my sister die. It was something that stuck with me for the rest of my life. Sam went next, but it wasn't entirely due to a lack of caution. Sam, like me, had experienced something at a very young age, and he had seen the Alegnarts before our mother had made it go away. It had made him incredibly cautious. Sam didn't take chances. He cut his meat fine enough to eat without teeth. He drank most liquids with a straw, and he never took a bite big enough to choke him. He took showers. He didn't go into water that went over his knees, and he didn't put his face in the water. No, what killed Sam was his work ethic. He was 4 years older than me, and when I was 12, he got a job. He worked nights, wanting to buy a car, and he worked almost every day after school. He was coming home on his bike one night, going over the bridge that would take him into the residential area where we lived, when a drunk driver came over the bridge and hit him. He fell off his bike, flying over the side of the bridge and into the water. The water wasn't deep. It was barely 4 feet, but when they pulled him out, the coroner was puzzled. I know he must have drowned, but it almost appears that he was strangled. He had shown Mom the bruises, and though she said it sounded dreadful, I could see in her eyes that she knew. I was 12 when she took me aside and told me that I was the oldest now. Your younger siblings need you now more than ever. Never forget that it's up to us to keep an eye on them, to keep them safe from the Alegnarts before he strikes again. That's just a story, I blurted out before I could think better of it. My mom shook her head at me. If you believe that, then I'll be having this discussion with your younger sister soon. You know better. You watched it kill Gabby. You saw it when it tried to kill you. Believe in this, and be cautious in everything you do. But why? I asked. Why does it follow us? It's always followed the members on my side of the family. It's what killed your grandfather, 2 of your aunts, and both of your uncles. It nearly killed your Aunt Stacy, but I stopped it. It's followed us since the old country, ever since your great-great-great-grandfather did something unforgivable. We were sitting in the living room after Sam's funeral, still dressed in our Sunday best, and it occurred to me that this was the same room Gabby and I were sitting in when we heard the ice cream truck. That seemed like 1,000,000 years ago now, not just 4, and I felt an odd sense of vertigo as I thought about it. Your thrice great-grandfather was a lumberman in Russia. He was respected. He was a pillar of the community. But the only thing he wanted was beyond his reach. He desired a woman who would not have him. He became desperate. So he went to speak with a bruja, a witch that lived on the outskirts of the village. He told the witch what he wanted, and she told him the price would be steep. He was a man of means, and he paid what she asked. She gave him potions and charms and spoke the words of mysticism, but none of it worked. The woman spurned his advances, and when he told the witch, she shook her head at him and said, "Then it's not meant to be. If your stars cannot be entangled, then they cannot. There's nothing to be done about it." He became irate, telling her that she would give him his money back if she couldn't get him what he wanted. She told him that could not be, that he had paid and taken his chances. Your great-great-great-grandfather became irate, and what he did next could not be taken back. He leapt across the table, knocking her crystals and baubles to the ground, and wrapped his fingers around her throat. He throttled her right there at her table, watching her face purpling, but the witch was not done yet. They say her lips never stopped moving, even as he strangled the life from her. And though he could not hear the words, he would remember them later. Alegnarts, Alegnarts, Alegnarts. She repeated them again and again, even as he strangled the life from her. He felt his own throat closing a little as the rage took him. When he finished, he let go of her and stepped back. He realized what he had done, and he sure was sorry, but there was no taking it back. Unknown to him, the witch had thrown her death curse on him, and it followed his bloodline for the rest of time. The Alegnarts follows us now, just waiting for the opportunity to squash us. It killed all but one of your great-great-grandfather's children, and your great-great-grandfather's children, and so on and so forth. It would have left only me, I suppose, but I saved your aunt, and have kept a close eye on her ever since. I told her husband about the legend, and now he watches her, so I don't have to. That's why you have to help me watch your siblings, so it doesn't happen to them. And so I did. I watched over Nikki and Matthew like they were made of glass, and that's why they nearly made it to adulthood. Matthew was about 4 years younger than me, Nikki too, and it was strange to think of what they might get up to if given the opportunity. It didn't matter. I watched them like a hawk. I hovered over them ceaselessly, and though I think they resented it, they also understood. I stopped Matthew from choking on spaghetti when he was 9. I stopped Nikki from drowning in the kiddie pool when she was 11. I stopped Matthew from choking on a soda when he was 12. I stopped Nikki from choking on ice when she was 13. It was a full-time job, but thinking of Gabby made it easier. I had to save them, like I should have saved her. And it worked, until Nikki suddenly went off script. She wanted to go to the beach with her class in the 10th grade. Nikki, I don't think it's a good idea. I was 20 then, still living at home and watching after them. Nikki was 16 and Matthew was 14, and Dad had been dead for nearly 3 years. It was a heart attack. There had been a close call with Nikki, and she had nearly died after an accident with an allergic reaction to cigarette smoke. He had collapsed during it and never gotten back up again. After that, I was even more attentive, watching for Dad and me, and it seemed like just the chance that the Alegnarts had been looking for. Well, I'm tired of never doing anything fun. I want to live a little. I'll be fine. Don't worry so much. Well, what if I chaperone the trip? What if I... No, she said, but she said it gently. I have to be responsible for myself sometime, even if it's just for a little while. My mother and I tried to talk sense into her, but she wouldn't listen. She went on the trip, telling us that she would be fine, but I went anyway. I watched from binoculars from my car, keeping a close eye on her as she splashed and played. I was too slow to save her, though. Too far away. She washed up an hour after the riptide got her. And then it was just me and Matthew. Matthew almost made it. He was so close. 17 and on the cusp of graduation. He had become like Sam, careful in the extreme. He saw the writing on the wall, had seen the Alegnarts many times, more times than he could count, and intended to beat the odds. He went nowhere. He came straight home, and he seemed to be certain that if he could make it to adulthood, he might beat the odds. He was sure of it, and as his 18th birthday approached, I kept an extra close eye on him. He was never far from my sight. We went everywhere together, and Mom commended me for my determination. I'd failed Nikki. I couldn't fail Matt. In the end, I never had a chance. We were watching TV, something mindless, when Matt got up and went to the bathroom. I got up too, but he shook his head, saying that he'd only be gone for a second. He needed to pee. It wasn't life-threatening. He went to the hall bathroom, and a moment later, I heard the toilet flush. I heard the water come on. I heard it go off. Then I heard a thump that had me running right away. He was sprawled on the ground, clutching at his throat and gasping for air. "Alegnarts, Alegnarts, Alegnarts!" I cried, not wasting time looking for fingers as I acted quickly. Nothing happened. "Alegnarts, Alegnarts, Alegnarts!" I cried again. But still nothing. I called for Mom, but she was out back hanging laundry, and wouldn't discover that her youngest was dead until it was too late. I tried CPR, but his chest wouldn't rise. I checked for finger marks, but there were none. Nothing was squeezing his neck, I would later find out. What had happened was just bad luck. He'd slipped on the floor mat and hit his throat just right, so that his windpipe was crushed. It was a 1 in a million injury, but it didn't stop the family curse from being fulfilled. So I stood there and held his hand, being with him as he died. He was scared. God, he was scared, but I gave him all the love and all the support that I could pass on. After that, it was just Mom and I. But I've decided that it ends with me. I'm scheduled for a vasectomy next month. I do not intend to have children that I will then have to also watch die. Mom didn't understand. She was furious at first, but I think she gets it now. If I never procreate, then the curse ends with me. If I have to remain celibate or become a priest or something, then that's what I'll do. Either way, there will never be another target for the Alegnarts. And so, he will strangle out, as he has strangled out my bloodline. It seems the least I can do to honor the siblings that I couldn't save.
It's always hard to realize that we can't fight the monsters, that we can't fight the things that are killing us, killing our families. That's always the hardest pill to swallow. Our next story is about the love of a brother for his older brother, and the odd, roundabout way that he goes about showing it. So let's hear the story of the Luke St. James Mystery Giveaway.
I've been participating in the Luke St. James Mystery Puzzle Books since I was very young. If you're unfamiliar with the company, Luke St. James makes puzzle books that have everything from crosswords to Sudoku, from word searches to word problems, and everything in between. Luke St. James Mystery Books had everything. They had been around for over 100 years, and they are one of the earliest makers of puzzle book games that I could find. They claim to have started out as brain teasers and riddles and slowly integrated into more popular puzzle book games. My dad was always obsessed with them, spending hours scouring them, despite the fact that most of them were already completed. My grandpa, too, he was the one who gave me my very first puzzle book when I was young, and he would often look at them when I was finished and nod. "Good work, boy. My hands are too unsteady to work the pen anymore, but my mind is still sharp enough to work the answers out." Dad used to look at my answers, too. He would practically rip them out of my hand when I offered the finished books to him, and then he would go over them a page at a time like he was looking for something. I never understood. Dad scared me a little, well, a lot, and he mostly stayed in the back of the house while Mom and I stayed out of his way. Mom said that he hadn't always been like that. She said that he was a very intelligent man, was a gifted mind, and that he had been very charming when she had met him in college. He'd been a teacher at the college after graduating, teaching linguistics and ancient languages, and he had worked for the FBI to crack ciphers and codes when they needed someone knowledgeable. She said he seemed like he was happy, but there was always something on his mind. She would be eating dinner with him, laying in bed, just watching TV, and this look would pass over him like static on a TV screen. She said it was pretty unsettling, but she just assumed that it was something that happened to men who were hyper-intelligent. Then, one day, he came home with a bunch of those St. James puzzle books, right about the time you turned 2, and he never quite climbed out of them. He died last year, and it took us a while to find him. Sometimes Dad wouldn't come out of his study for days on end, and that made his comings and goings hard to track sometimes. Sometimes he wouldn't eat for days, just sitting in the back room and mumbling loud enough that you could hear him from under the door. And then I would wake up the next morning and find Mom cleaning up a bunch of pots and pans where he had woken up and cooked a king-size meal for just himself before heading back to his study. Things like this had gone on for 18 years. I was in college myself before he died, and I think if his accounts hadn't been continuing to pay the bills, Mom would have taken me and left him. So when I went to tell him that dinner was ready one night, and wasn't greeted by the loud mumblings that usually came from beneath his door, I stopped and listened. There was always some sign that Dad was in there. His shadow as he walked fitfully across the floor, the soft mumbling as he worked something out, the creak of the floorboards or his comfy chair, or something that let me know that he was in there. Today there was nothing, silence, and it struck me as wrong. I reached for the knob and remembered how much Dad hated to be disturbed before walking away instead. This repeated itself for nearly a week before I found my hands turning that knob and breaking the cardinal rule of Dad's study. I had never actually been in Dad's study in the whole time I had lived in the house. The door was always either locked or barred by the understanding of what waited for you on the other side. Mom could tell me that Dad was kind and charismatic, all she wanted, but the only Dad I had ever known was a tired, sullen, angry man. You did not go into his study unless the house was on fire. You knocked, you spoke your business, and you left. If you walked in, you got the full brunt of a screaming, spitting, angry jackal who was defending its pups from an intruder. I had only done it once or twice, and both times had been enough to make me never want to open it again. So as the door came open, and I saw him sitting there with his back to it, and his head leaned back, I thought he might be asleep. "Dad?" I asked quietly. "Dad, are you okay?" He didn't say anything. "Dad," I said again, taking a step towards him. He didn't say anything. I came up beside him, my anxiety at an all-time high, but when I saw his face, I felt my teeth come together hard. His face was frozen in a look of abject horror, his mouth hanging open in a silent scream. I backed out of the room and called for Mom. He had been dead for about a week, but none of us had known, and we could have gone right on not knowing if I hadn't broken the rules and gone to check on him. It was a small funeral. Dad didn't have any friends, and most of his colleagues at the college had stopped trying to contact him a long time ago. It was a few cousins, my mom, my grandpa, and me. Grandpa is wheelchair-bound, his arthritis so bad that it's motorized, and after the service, Mom asked if he would like to come and stay at the house instead of returning to his nursing home. It would save you a trip, and we have a room available now that Murray is gone, she finally settled on. Sure, if I won't be in the way, he said. I'm fairly independent, but I know I can be a little bit of a pain to have an old man hanging around. We don't mind, do we? She said, looking at me. Not a bit, I said, meaning it. As much of a bear as Dad had been, Grandpa was a teddy bear. I went and visited him often, and he still checked over my puzzle books when I got done with them. We shared a love of puzzles and strange knowledge, and Grandpa had been more of a father to me than my own father had. Having Grandpa move in would be great. I had mostly been staying so Mom wouldn't be by herself, and having two people to talk to in the house would be nice. So, when I got home from the funeral, I started cleaning out the study so Grandpa could stay in it. The room wasn't large, a little bigger than a bathroom, and it smelled like a bathroom, too. The place reeked of sweat and unwashed flesh, and now there was also a rotten odor that I associated with a corpse. Dad had made a regular little nest in here, pinning things to the wall and leaving notes pinned to them so that he could decipher them. The more of them I took down, the more I realized that it was pages out of the Luke St. James books. It wasn't even any particular kind. There were crosswords next to Sudoku, next to searches, next to riddles, and so on and so forth. They nearly covered all four walls, covering the windows as well, and as I took them down and put them in a garbage bag, one phrase kept jumping out at me. The Luke St. James Mystery Giveaway. Dad had written it again and again, and it seemed to be the center of this spider web that he had been papering the walls with. He'd been looking for it for a long time, it would seem, and pretty soon I stopped putting papers in the bag and started taking them back out again. The notes were pretty clear that Dad had been close to discovering whatever this giveaway was, and soon I came to a description of it amidst a myriad of notes. The Luke St. James Mystery Giveaway, a contest devised by the mysterious Luke St. James himself. Luke St. James, world traveler and man of mystery, is said to have hidden the location of a fabulous treasure in the pages of his books. He claims that the last clue would come out of book number 100,000, and then those who participated in the search would have all the clues to find the treasure. The clues are scattered throughout the other workbooks, spanning back to the start of the company and modern day. Whoever deciphers the riddle will discover the greatest treasure the world-traveling man of mystery has ever owned. I looked down at the notes, most of which came with draconian symbols and descriptions, and took them to my room to study them further. After a few hours of trying to make sense of them, I was stumped. I knew what Dad had been searching for now, and he had done a lot of work, but it seemed he had only a few of the answers he needed. I needed a different perspective on this. I needed a partner for this little endeavor. Gramps. He looked up from his chair, sitting in the living room and reading quietly. Yes? Have you ever heard of the Luke St. James Mystery Giveaway? He went rigid, his eyes going wide. How did you find out about that? There's no way your dad would have told you about it. He didn't, but while I was cleaning out his study, I found all these notes. Seems to be some kind of contest or something, and I think it was what he'd been looking for all this time. Grandpa leaned around the back of his chair, clearly seeing if my mother was paying attention, before wheeling closer. "Let's take this conversation somewhere a little more private, kid." He followed me to Dad's study, now divested of its notes and cryptic charts, and closed the door softly behind himself. "Yes, I've heard of it. It was I who told your father about it, and I wish I hadn't now. It lit a mania in him, a puzzle that no one had ever solved, and he meant that he would be the one to solve it. I ruined him, and I don't want to ruin you as well. I'd like you to let it go, please. It's not worth it. It never was." "But if Dad nearly solved it," "I don't believe he did. I don't think anyone has ever solved it, and they never will. Don't let it control you like it controlled him. Just get rid of his notes and pretend that you never read any of it." I gripped the bag a little tighter, not wanting to get rid of it, but as I nodded, I saw Grandpa relax a little. "Good. You're doing the right thing, kid. Nothing good can come of it. Keep at your studies and make something of yourself. And let this die." I left with the bag of papers, letting Grandpa explore his new space. I stood at the crossroads in the hallway for a while, looking down at the door that would take me to the garage so I could get out the garbage cans, and then to my own room that would allow me to hang on to them. I loved the puzzles. I think I said that, and this was a puzzle beyond puzzles. I stood there, torn for quite a while, but in the end, I let my obsession get the better of me. I took the bag to my room, I hid it in my closet, and after dinner, I started working on the mystery that had killed my father. Dad's notes were pretty easy to follow, and I got the threads of it pretty quickly. Dad had been very busy over the years, and the more I read, the more I really did believe that he had been close to solving it. He had determined that whatever the answer was, it led to a series of numbers. He had a sequence from a Sudoku puzzle, words from crosswords and word searches that he had converted into more numbers, and on and on and on. Dad had found the clues to find the puzzles he needed, but he was short 2 pages and 2 numbers. These were the last 2 things I needed, and I just needed to find them to solve my dad's final puzzle. I started working on it after school. Grandpa was right. I needed to finish school and have something to fall back on. The clues were 2, and they were both cryptic. The crown of madness within the mirror, 2258, was the first one. Not something I understood, though Dad's notes thought it might have something to do with brain surgery or lasers. The second was the cage of snow holds secrets of flight, 8643. I didn't have a clue what any of that meant, but unlike Dad, I had resources that he had never used. They say you can find anything on the internet, and they weren't wrong. Reddit had a few subs about the mystery, and a few other sites had speculations, but I began to see that Dad was the farthest along. Some of them were sharing notes, most of them were working on parts of the riddle so they could get the prize and share it, and a couple of them were asking questions I know I had the answers to. What's more, one of them knew why the answers had to be numbers. "It's coordinates," he said. "We just need all the numbers, and then it'll tell us exactly where the treasure is." I had to trade a little, some clues that hadn't quite made sense, but they helped me figure out the number at the end of the clues, too. They were book numbers, the sequence numbers on the puzzle books that would have the answer. Luckily, I had 8643 on my shelf. I had gotten it completely at random a few weeks ago, and it seemed almost poetic that my dad hadn't noticed and taken it from me. I started flipping through it, searching for clues, and then I came to a puzzle called Birds of a Feather, 2 of the words jumping out at me. a 4-letter word for a bird's home, which I identified as cage, and an 8-letter word for someone who travels to a warmer climate, which I had identified as snowbird, which meant between them was a single word, and it seemed to fit the pattern: dove. According to Dad's cipher, that made the number 46. I'd done it. I'd discovered another piece, and now I was on to the next one. This one proved to be a little more difficult. I didn't have book 2258, and it proved to be something that I couldn't just buy off of Amazon like I usually did. It was rare, something from the late 80s, and it was proving hard to find. I scoured the internet, looking everywhere for a copy, and I'd even taken to going to thrift stores and secondhand shops. I asked people on the subreddit if they had copies, but so far, no one had found one that was fully intact. Dad had hundreds, maybe thousands of these puzzle books, but this one had eluded him. I started to understand my dad's frustration, wondering how he had done this for 18 years. I remembered the infrequent packages that came in, the only time I saw my dad come out in the daylight, and how happy it made him to run back to his office with them. Was that all that awaited me? Was this chase all that life held for me? Someone called my name, and I looked up to find my mom at the door to my room. When I looked up from my computer screen that I'd been working on, it was pretty clear that she'd been calling me a few times. "The moving truck has your grandpa's stuff from storage. Could you help him bring it in, please?" I nodded. I needed a break, and went to help with boxes. Grandpa had brought a few things from the nursing home, but the majority of his stuff had been in storage. He had finally gotten enough together to pay a moving company to bring it, and as I carried boxes to his new room, I saw that he had installed some bookshelves, a desk, and a thin single bed in one corner across from a TV he hung on the wall. The moving guys and I emptied the truck, not a hugely taxing operation, and as the boxes sat stacked against the study wall where my father had worked himself to death, I turned to leave my grandpa to it. "Would you mind helping me unpack a little? It's hard in my chair, and I'm sure the two of us could get it done in no time." I started to tell him I didn't have time, but I decided to take a longer break from the mystery of Luke St. James and his little prize. I unpacked a bunch of knickknacks, some photos of Grandpa and my dad when he was a kid, some old westerns, clothes that were still somehow on the hangers, and a box of jewelry, before I got to the box I seemed to have been looking for. I opened it, and my breath stuck in my throat as I beheld the bounty that lay before me. There were so many, all of them stacked one on top of the other, and I realized that they were mine. The one on top still had my name on it, in the unsteady writing of a 5-year-old. Grandpa had kept all of them, every single one that Dad hadn't taken, and he even had some of them that my dad had later discarded. It was a whole box of Luke St. James puzzle books, and I reckoned that he had about 100 or more of them. "You thought I just threw them out?" Grandpa said with a smile. "Nah, kid, I was always proud of your hard work. At first, I was also working on the mystery, but after a while, they just became a source of pride for me. I liked knowing that the cleverness your father and I had always prided ourselves on had carried on to you, and I still am." It was hard not to hear him say that and give up on the fruitless search, but even as he admonished me, I was already weighing the chances of finding the one that I needed. The odds were not in my favor, but I had to try. I took them over to the bookshelf, just as I had the westerns and a few pulp novels that he had, and started shelving them. They started in the 1500 range, and that excited me a little. It meant they might hold the one I was after, and my hands were sweating as I took them out. They fluctuated, sometimes jumping by hundreds of volumes, and as I shelved them, Grandpa talked about things that had happened when I was a kid or when my dad was a kid. He became so much background noise, a drone of flies, as I watched the numbers. Grandpa had been nice enough to put them in some kind of order, and as they crept into the 2000s, I got excited all over again. When it went from 252 to 278, I felt like screaming, but a couple of volumes later I found it. Volume 2258 of the Luke St. James mystery books. I had owned it once. I could own it again. Hey, Gramps, could I borrow this one? Grandpa looked at the book questioningly, reading over the cover and getting even more confused. You finished that one when you were 9, kiddo. What do you need it for? Oh, I just want to look at it. I think I remember it, and I want to see it. I guess so, but I don't know why you would need a... Then his face darkened a little as realization hit him. You're chasing that damn mystery, aren't you? I thought I told you to leave it alone. It consumed your father. It nearly consumed me. If you keep on like this, it'll consume you too. This is the last piece, Gramps. Once I get this, I can find it, and then it can't haunt anyone anymore. He shook his head. Take it then. Take it and go. I'd expected better of you, but I suppose you're just like your father. He let me go then, and I ran from his room with my book. I felt terrible, but I was still hungry for answers. I scrabbled through the book, looking desperately for something to do with lasers or surgery or something. The book had none of these things, no matter how many times I flipped through it. I was getting frustrated. The pages crinkled under my fingers, and when my eyes fell on something, I felt a spark of hope. It was a word search about Alice in Wonderland, and the words crown and mirror jumped out at me. Between the words on the search, all of it done in my shaky 5-year-old hand, was the word Hatter. I felt my breath catch. This was it. I did the math and came up with 71. I put it with the others I had come up with and was left with a 16-digit number if I were to put them all together. The guys on Reddit seemed to have been right. Looked like it had to be a set of coordinates. Now I just had to figure out where it went to. How hard could that be, right? I floundered with how to start using these numbers for a few days, not even sure what to do with them. I had them, but they weren't in any order. I should know. I tried plugging them in and came up with a location in the middle of the ocean. I started plugging them in randomly. There were only so many combinations, after all. Grandpa wasn't talking to me when I had reason to be around him, which was mostly just meals, and Mom seemed to have noticed. She asked if we were fighting or something, and I told her it was just a disagreement. She said that we should get over it, that we were too close to be acting like this. I agreed, but I knew that he never would. I was also extremely distracted by my search for the proper coordinates. After 2 months, I had narrowed it down to 3 locations. Most of the coordinates were either for places overseas, which I hoped was not where the treasure was located, locations in the ocean, and a handful of places here in the United States. Of those here in the States, only 3 seemed to be viable. One was on a decommissioned military base. One was in the middle of a mall in the Midwest, and one was a farm near New York. I had narrowed it down by Googling the locations, seeing if there were any relevancy to Luke St. James, and that was how I came to these 3. The military base had been somewhere that he had been taken after an expedition had gone amiss and he needed emergency rescue. The mall had once been a place that had been used to print his earlier books. The farm was somewhere very personal to him, and seemed to have the best claim for a place where he would bury some great treasure. The farm, as it turned out, was his childhood home. He had grown up here with an older brother and his mother, and it had been the place where he had begun devising his puzzles and the things that had made him famous. He published his first book here. Here began his company, and it seemed the right place to look for his treasure. I had a break coming up from school. Spring break was a great time to take a trip, so I packed some things and told my mom I'd be out for a few days. She told me to have fun, but the look my grandpa gave me wasn't his usual disapproving stare. He looked intrigued, as if he wondered if I had found something that had escaped my father and he. I headed out, the farm about 6 hours from here, and as I drove, I couldn't help but wonder what sort of treasure Luke St. James had buried on his family farm. I had already prepared for the inevitability that somebody had found it and just not told anyone. I would find an empty box or an empty crevice, maybe with a note left by whoever had gotten there first. And this would be just a fun story to tell sometime. Grandpa would laugh at me when I told him and say that this was just how things were. Maybe it would mend the hurt feelings between us, something I wanted very badly. It'd be nice to find something else to hyperfixate about. If it wasn't an empty box, though, it could be anything. Luke St. James had been a world traveler, and his treasure could be gold or jewels or even ancient artifacts. It would likely be taken by the New York government once they found out about it, but I was willing to take that chance. It was all about finding it for me, and I was excited to come to the end of the chase. When I came to Cabrir, I got a hotel for the night and started looking for a map of the area. Cabrir is a tiny little town with 2 stoplights and more farms than businesses, but the old guy at the library laughed as he photocopied me a map that looked older than I was. No one needs a map of this place. Not for a long time. There isn't enough of this place to make a map. Someone from the Farm Council made one in the 1960s, and not much has changed since. With the map in hand, I headed to the old St. James farm, now called Reisman Place. The Reismans had a nice spread, about 300 acres they were using to graze cows and sheep on, and the old farmer was sitting on the porch when I pulled up. I saw him sigh, clearly having gone through this before, and as I raised a hand in greeting, he got straight to the point. "I assume you're here to look for that Luke St. James mystery treasure. No, I don't know where it is. No, I haven't found it. No, I don't have any of his stuff. And no, you cannot just go randomly digging around in my field." I nodded. I should have expected that. "Actually, sir, I have coordinates to the treasure. It's in the woods near the edge of your property. I just wanted to ask permission before I went out there and started looking around." I pointed, not really wanting to show him the coordinates, and he nodded. "I got one request," he said, grinning as he pointed to a little shed behind the house. "You mind if I come with you? I've been hearing about this thing for years, and I'd like to at least see it. Hell, you're the first fella who hasn't come out here and just wanted to start digging." I laughed, nodding if I asked if he had an extra shovel. I'd brought a trowel and suddenly felt kind of unprepared. A few minutes later, we were heading out and away from the farm as we headed for the woods. The biography I had listened to while I was working on the location had told me that Luke St. James had played in these woods a lot with his older brother when they were younger, and it was a place he spoke of often as a place he would always treasure. That line had always stood out to me, and it was why I had come here first. The farmer talked the whole way there, telling me about people who had come snooping here. He had tried his hand at the Luke St. James puzzle for a while, but it was a little over his head, he said. Some of them didn't even ask. They just came out here at night and started digging. He had come out one night, the moon full, and found some fella digging in his sheep field. One of them had snuck under the house, digging into the foundation as he looked for anything. He had found him a few days later when he ran out of food. He had just started on a story about the guy who tried to drive a backhoe onto his cow field when we came to the spot that the coordinates said should hold the treasure. It was a little hole in the ground, too small for a large person, but just perfect for a child. We dug around for a little bit, but it appeared that the cave wasn't something that we could just dig into. "I've got a pickaxe. Farmer Reisman said, and as he ran back to the farm, I took out my flashlight and decided to see what was in that little cave. I had already established that I couldn't climb into it and didn't really want to. There could be a deep shaft awaiting me, and having to spend some time in a dark cave with broken bones as I waited for rescue services sounded pretty terrible. I couldn't see much, the hole was oddly shaped, but I decided a picture might be just as good. I hung the phone down, snapped a photo, and then I brought it back up. I nearly dropped the phone again when I saw what was waiting for me down there. Farmer Reisman came back with his pickaxe, and I advised him to call the police. Why? Something dangerous down there? Maybe, but there's definitely a child's body down there, and they probably won't appreciate us dropping rocks on it. He went and called the police, and I stayed there and tried to figure out exactly what I had stumbled across. What followed was cops, a lot of explaining, and the disclosure of some information I had been jealously guarding for a while. I told them about the giveaway, the clues, the coordinates, and how I had come to find the body. They didn't think I had anything to do with the body being down there. They made that very clear. And after the questions were answered, the detective took a baggie out of an envelope and left it on the table for me. What is it? I asked as he got up to leave. That's for you, or more importantly, for whoever finds the Luke St. James Mystery giveaway treasure. It's a photocopy. We kept the original as evidence, but I think it might shed some light on what's going on here. I picked up the bag and looked at the note, reading over the rough handwriting as the detective watched me. To you, the winner of my giveaway, I say congratulations. I have been around the world several times, seen wonders beyond imagination, but what you have found remains my greatest treasure. Brandon St. James, my older brother, went missing when I was 12. He was 13, a year older than me, and his imagination was such that he never ceased to make our games something to look forward to. We found the cave when I was 6. It was our secret hideout, the place we hid things that mattered to us. We played there until I could no longer fit through the opening. Brandon was older, but he wasn't as big as me. He still used it to hide secrets well into his teens, and it became the place where he would hide his last secret. He left one night after a terrible fight with my parents, and what followed was a torrential rainstorm. I never saw him again, but I hoped he had gotten away. Years later, when I returned to the cave to see if I could find something I had left there, I got enough of my head in to find that it had become his final resting place. I don't know if he drowned down there or what happened to him, but he was dead. I left him there, never telling a soul about what had happened to him. You are possibly the only person who knows where he lies. I mourned my brother. His imagination made me want to make puzzles and games and riddles for imaginative children and adults. And now, he is my final riddle to you. I hope you enjoyed discovering his tomb, because by the time you find him, I too will be in the ground. Thank you for your efforts, and please, stay curious. Luke St. James, Esquire. I sat there for a long time, just looking at the note and trying to figure out what to do with all this. In the end, I took my prize and went home. I still had the picture of the skeleton and the note with his signature, and decided to post it in hopes of ending the mystery. My grandpa and I had a long talk about it, and he congratulated me for solving the mystery. You did something neither me or your father could accomplish. I'm sorry that I held it against you. Good job, boy. Good job. I don't think anybody online really believed me. I'm pretty sure that most of them are still looking for it, even though I've posted the coordinates and the final answers. Let them search if that's what they want to do. For them, the chase goes on, but for me, that's all there is. So there you are, all you who seek the treasure of Luke St. James. It died before many of you were born, in a hole in the ground.
One more story for you, and I've saved a pretty good one for last. It's a classic about a younger sister who finds an interesting friend, and the way that interesting friend helps her deal with her big brother. Let's listen to a story about Mr. Gozo's game.
When I was a little girl, I had a strange friend that I believed I had made up until about an hour ago. My father and mother were out of the house a lot when I was a kid. It never really occurred to me that we were poor, but looking back, I realized that we must have been. Mom worked 2 jobs, serving in a restaurant and driving a bus for the school. Dad worked in a fish market during the day, so he could attend school in the evenings. Both of them would come home every night, very late, and most of the time I was already in bed. They'd just flop down for a few hours before they had to get up and do it again. They were never cruel to us. They just didn't have time for my older brother and I. Mom and Dad got together in high school, and Mom's senior year photos show a swell of her belly as she carried my brother. They were parents before they were really more than kids themselves, and with no real skills, they had to take whatever jobs they could to keep food on the table. For the first 10 years of my life, there wasn't really a lot of happiness. There were no Christmas mornings, there weren't a lot of birthday presents, and I lacked the parental involvement that a lot of my peers seemed to have. That was probably what led me to create Mr. Gozo. My brother was supposed to be watching me after school. I've talked about my brother a little bit, but I don't think I've told you much about him, really. He was 8 years older than me, a senior in high school, who was supposed to be my caretaker while my parents were out of the house. This usually translated to him being in his room with the door closed, or him leaving the house and telling me not to answer the door or go outside. This meant that I spent a lot of time alone as a kid, but I much preferred the time when he left me alone. My brother was more than a neglectful babysitter. He could be really mean and seemed to delight in tormenting me. If he was gone, then it was just me and Mr. Gozo with the house to ourselves. Mr. Gozo was a friend that I discovered living in my house one day. He was tall, taller than my dad even, and had a strange, whispery voice that always used to make me laugh. He wore grown-up clothes, a long coat and a pair of suit pants with square-toed cowboy boots sticking out from underneath them. His head was round and pale, his eyes always seemed a little too big for his face, and he didn't have any ears, which I found very funny as a kid. His smile was my favorite thing about him, because it reminded me of the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland. Something else about him that always reminded me of that cat was that he would disappear whenever anyone else was around. One minute we'd be having a tea party or playing hide and seek, and the next my brother would come home and Mr. Gozo would just vanish. I told my parents about him, but they just smiled and said it was good that I had such an active imagination. My brother said I was a little freak and told me to stay out of his way. Mr. Gozo did not like my brother.
He is a brute. He knows nothing of imagination.
We played a lot, Gozo and I, but I remember his favorite game was hide and seek. He would never beat me, though. I was an excellent hider. He would clump around for a while before finally saying I'd won, and I would burst out and wrap my arms around his leg. Despite never winning, he always wanted to play. He seemed to like chasing me through the house, and when I think back on it these days, I see how lucky I was to never have learned anything to the contrary. You see, Mr. Gozo would always make these little bets before we started playing hide and seek.
If I can't find you, then I will get you whatever you desire. But if I win, then you must come back to my house to play.
Of course, I would always agree. I was 10 and very good at hiding. When I say he never found me, I mean he never found me. I would hide under things that were too hard for him to lift, or hide in places that were too small for him to get into. I would camouflage myself with blankets and pillows, and I could remain absolutely still and quiet for quite some time. Mr. Gozo would try his hardest, stomping around as his 2 big eyes roved everywhere. Eventually, he would just give up and tell me I had won. He always made good on his promises, too. I've watched Sailor Moon or Powerpuff Girls in the middle of the night long after Cartoon Network stopped showing cartoons, and I've eaten chocolate ice cream and pizza when we barely had groceries in the house. Much like Mr. Gozo, though, If my brother came home early, he couldn't see the food, or the show, or the new toy that Mr. Gozo had given me. I would turn back to find an empty plate or a staticky TV, and Mr. Gozo would be nowhere to be found. Mr. Gozo would play anything I wanted, but he asked to play hide and seek at least once a day. If I said I didn't want to, he never pushed the issue. He also never let losing deter him from playing. It appeared that whatever he wanted to do with me at his house could wait. He was a perfect companion for a lonely child, and I never saw his more sinister side until I looked back after the incident. Not until the hide and seek when I lost my brother. It was late, probably after 11 o'clock, and Mr. Gozo and I were playing hide and seek, as we did most every day. I kept stumping him, even after hours of playing, but this looked like the time he was finally going to win. I was hiding beneath the couch cushions, compressing myself in a divot under the middle cushion where the springs were sagging. I could see him searching for me between the small gap in the cushions, and Mr. Gozo was looking desperately. He had lost 8 times in a row, and I could see that his patience was starting to deteriorate. He was pushing things aside, rustling the curtains, and pushing the pillows off the couch roughly as he searched for me. As the pillows hit the floor, I must have moved slightly, because he turned those much too expressive eyes back to the couch. They zeroed in on the cushion, and I knew that Gozo was about to win. He wrapped his long, sinuous fingers around the cushion, grinning as he prepared to lift it up. I tried to stifle a laugh as I prepared to be found. Just then, keys rattled in the door, and I saw Mr. Gozo turn his head to look. I looked too, and when I turned back, he was gone. My brother walked into the living room, and as I climbed out from under the couch, I could smell him before I saw him. He'd come home like this a few times, smelling sour and like the chemicals Mom kept under the sink, and he sighed in disgust as he looked at the house. I hadn't expected him to be back so soon, and Mr. Gozo had been a little rough in his searching the last few times. There were pillows and blankets on the ground, the curtains were open, and there were books scattered around, as well as magazines on the floor. The living room was a mess, and as I climbed from the couch, he asked me what the hell I had done. Nothing, I said timidly. Mr. Gozo and I were just playing hide and seek. My brother rolled his eyes. Mr. Gozo, Mr. Gozo, Mr. Gozo. He slurred the name as he said it, stumbling a little as he flopped onto the couch. I am so sick of hearing about that stupid freak. Clean up this crap before Mom and Dad get home, and yell at me for it. I started picking up, feeling him watching me as I moved around. He was acting weird, weirder than usual, and he was making me uncomfortable as he sat staring on the couch. I cleaned up the books, the magazines, put the blankets back on the quilt rack, and closed the curtains. As I went to put the pillows on the couch, I looked into his eyes and saw something I hadn't seen there before. It wasn't love. I knew what that looked like, but it was different from anything else I'd ever seen. I didn't like it, and when he caught my wrist and pulled me towards him, I squirmed and tried to get away. Let go. You're hurting me, I said, trying to keep the whine out of my voice. If I whined, it would only egg him on. Don't be such a... He burped, and I could smell the pungent brew. Such a party pooper. Come on and sit with your big brother. I struggled, pulling against him as he tried to pull me onto his lap. He was acting really weird, and my brain screamed at me that I did not want him to get his hands on me. I looked around, looking for Mr. Gozo for help, and saw him peeking from the hallway. His expressive face told me that he wanted to help, but he didn't know how. There seemed to be a sort of duality about him, a want to help his friends, but a knowledge that such a thing would be unwise. My brother swore at me, yanking on my arm and telling me to stop being such a cold bitch. Just like that bitch at the party, he mumbled, yanking hard and almost pulling me off my feet. Suddenly, though, I knew how I could get him to stop. There was a way that Gozo could help me. I can't play right now, big brother. I'm playing with Mr. Gozo. He'll get mad if we don't finish the game. I saw him sneer, but I also saw something else there. My brother pretended he wasn't a little weirded out by Mr. Gozo, but I could tell that the idea of an invisible friend kind of freaked him out. He had seen the pictures I drew of him, and I couldn't help but notice the shudder they elicited in him sometimes. When he was wobbly, like he was tonight, he was especially nervous about Mr. Gozo, and I decided to take advantage of that to get away. You played with him long enough, he said, his grip tightening. Why don't you come play in my room? I've got some new games I want to show you. I shook my head. Mr. Gozo will get mad. I have to finish my game. I turned back to the hallway and saw him shaking his head, begging me not to go on, but I pressed my luck. But if you play with us and finish the game, then I'd be done and we could play, I guess. I tried to stay calm, but his touch was making me nervous, his sweaty hands making my skin crawl. My brother looked thoughtful for a moment and let my arm slip out of his hand. Okay, one more game with Mr. Gozo, and then it's our turn to play, right? His smile made me want to run out into the night and never come back. Right. You hide, and I'll hide, while Mr. Gozo counts. Go hide so he doesn't find you. My brother got up, wobbling a little, and went down the hall. I turned to go hide too, and that's when I heard Mr. Gozo's voice. Please don't do this. You could just come with me. He can't hurt you where we're going. I turned around and saw Mr. Gozo towering over me, his eyes looking sorrowful as his mouth held in a frown. Count to 100, Mr. Gozo. If you find me first, I'll go with you, but if you find him first, he has to go with you. We looked at each other for a count of 10 before he put his hands over his eyes, and I ran off to hide. I went in the kitchen, having a perfect place in mind, as I heard Mr. Gozo's count reach 15. I opened the cabinet beneath the sink and squeezed in, not sure if I would still fit. I had found this spot a while ago, seeing the small space beside it once you were under the sink, and marked it for future use. I knew it would be too small for Mr. Gozo, or my brother, to squeeze into, and they would have a hard time seeing me in the little space between the drawers and the wall. I squeezed in there, pulling the drawers back in as I inadvertently nudged them, and pressed myself as flat as I could against the wall. Even if my brother got bored and came to find me, he'd never find me here. I breathed very shallowly and stifled my gasp as I heard Gozo's count reach 100. Then, the game began. It started out normally, Gozo seeking and me hiding. He checked beneath things, he checked under things, but the gravity of the game began to shift very quickly. Gone was the playful talk as he tried to find me. Gone was the playful way he looked. Now he was shoving things over, pushing them around, and it sounded like he was tearing the house apart. He moved into the kitchen, glasses breaking and things on the counter being pushed onto the floor. This wasn't like him. Why was he acting like this? I shivered in my hiding place, waiting to be found or for him to move on. I heard the table flip over, the face of the microwave shatter as it hit the ground, and the floor groan as the refrigerator was pushed over, its guts spilling everywhere. Mr. Gozo called my name, his normally happy voice cracking with sorrow and anger. I wanted to go to him then, wanted to wrap my arms around him and comfort my old friend, but I didn't dare leave my cubby. I would stay hidden all night if I needed to. A part of me now feared Gozo as much as I feared my brother. Come out! Come out! It's not too late. You can still... What in the hell is going on in here? I heard my brother yelling, could almost picture him in the doorway to the kitchen, and I eased out of the cubby and moved a shaky hand towards the door of the cabinet. I heard Gozo's heavy boots as he stepped towards him, my brother asking who he was and what the hell he was doing in our house. He was slurring and shouting. Mr. Gozo was silent as the grave as he walked towards him. I pushed the corner of the cabinet open, just a little bit, and looked out of the crack, seeing the two long legs as they walked towards my suddenly scared brother. I was looking between his ankles as he walked. He had been so close to my hiding place that he might have heard the silverware shivering in the drawers if I had started shaking any harder. My name is Mr. Gozo, and I believe that you have been found. My brother screamed as Mr. Gozo blocked him from sight, and I pulled myself back into the cubby and sat shuddering as he went right on yelling in terror. I stayed there until my parents came home an hour later and called the police. They had many questions, the police and my parents. I told them that I'd been playing with Mr. Gozo when my brother had come home. He was acting weird, so I said he should play hide-and-seek with us, so I could hide from him. He was trying to get me to do things that made me feel weird, so I hid and then Mr. Gozo had wrecked the house looking for him. When my brother came to see what all the noise was about, Mr. Gozo had taken him away, and I had hidden in my spot while he screamed. The police officer didn't understand what I was talking about with all the Mr. Gozo stuff, but when he asked my parents if they had a son, they just shook their head. No, she's always been an only child. I could have sworn we called a sitter for her since we knew we wouldn't be home till late. Didn't you hire a sitter? Dad asked Mom. Mom just shook her head. I thought you had. They both, however, had this dreamy look on their face, confusion mixed with embarrassment, like when you walk into a room and forget why you came there. It probably seems weird to you that I keep calling my brother by his title and not his name. It's because, as I saw my parents looking so confused, I realized that I didn't know his name either. I remembered that I'd had a brother, in that vague way that you remember that when you were 6 you had a pet, but not exactly what happened to it. But I couldn't remember his name. He was gone from all the family photos. His name was gone from any journal entry or class assignment I had wrote on it, and no one remembered him at all. It was as though he never existed, and even now, I can't remember what he looks like or what his voice sounded like. I only remember that he existed, and he's gone. I wonder often if that's what happened when Mr. Gozo caught you. The police had a lot of questions after that, and it was finally agreed upon that I had been the victim of a break-in and hidden from the intruders. They hadn't found me, so they had left after a while, and I was extremely lucky, they said. The police agreed to check the house, but found nothing. My parents said they would check their valuables, but never reported anything missing. Mr. Gozo had only taken one thing, and they couldn't remember that it had even existed to start with. They sent me to bed, telling me to get some sleep while they cleaned up the mess, and that's when I saw Mr. Gozo for the last time. I was lying in bed that night, listening to my parents talk about how they needed to be more careful about leaving someone here with me, when I suddenly felt his eyes on me. I rolled over to see his sad face, his heavy eyes full of sorrow, and his too big mouth turned down into a frown. I also saw the speckles of blood on his normally so clean coat, and the small, hesitant smile lying just below the surface as he gauged my reaction to him. Go away, Mr. Gozo. I don't want to play with you anymore. I made him go away. I made him stop hurting you. I showed you what I was so you could be safe, and now you want me gone? I rolled over, looking at him and yelling, Go away, Gozo! Say it again. Say it thrice, and I'll never darken your door again. Go away, Gozo, I almost whispered, hearing my parents stop talking downstairs. He evaporated like a fine mist, and I never saw him again. Well, until today. I'm a grown-up now, married with a girl of my own, and I haven't thought about Mr. Gozo until just a few hours ago. I was putting away laundry when I found my 4-year-old hiding in the towel closet. Emily apparently got her father's hiding genes, because a blind man could have found her hiding under that pile of towels. She squealed as I found her, but then looked grumpy and told me to close the door before he found her. Who? I asked, smiling at her as I lifted her into my arms. Mr. Gozo, Emily said, and my blood ran cold. She took me to her room when I asked who that was and showed me pictures. He wears the same long coat, the same straight black pants. She even drew the square-toed boots that stick out from beneath them. She captured his face in a way that I never could have as a child. His pale oval face, his almost cartoonishly large eyes, his smiling mouth of pointed teeth, and his distinct lack of ears. His head is still shaved, but she's drawn him with a large top hat, an eye floating in its middle. The eye is blue. Were my brother's eyes maybe blue? She's in my room now, with me, whining because she can't finish her game with Mr. Gozo. Sometimes I feel like I can see him out of the corner of my eye as I write this, his wide smile predatory. I don't know what to do.
I can see Emily talking to him in the mirror, his two large forms sitting on the bed as he listens to her. Every now and again, though, I see those two big eyes of his glance over at me, knowing me and seeing me for who I am. I want to take my daughter and run, but I don't know how he will react to such a move. Perhaps I can offer him one last game. Perhaps I can finally give him what he always wanted. Perhaps I can save my daughter, as my big brother inadvertently saved me all those years ago. I have to try, don't I?
Good evening, my little creeperonies. It's me, Dr. Plague. Thank you so much for joining me for tonight's story. It's time once again to thank our patrons. Thanks to Leslie Lou Riddle for being our spooky skeleton tier contributor. Thanks, Leslie. We just couldn't do it without you. If you too would like to be one of our contributors, come on down to Patreon. We've got plenty of tiers. I'm sure there's one that'll suit you. And as always, you can always pick up a book on Amazon. I have 4 now. Might I suggest Stragview Stories? It's a collection of prison short stories that I think are pretty good. Considering that I spent 4 years working in a prison, I've got a lot of technical know-how about how spooky prisons can be. And as always, I hope you'll join us next time for more stories. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.
And just like that, our stories are at an end for another day. I do hope we'll see you around the campfire again sometime for another episode of Cozy Horror. Until then, this is Dr. Plague, wishing you a wonderful day and a spooky evening.